You're listening to CAAT Tales, the podcast of SLC Faculty Local 417, your union connection. Each episode, we bring you real stories from our members, practical tips on your rights, and the kind of information that helps us all move forward.
Welcome back to CAAT Tales, the podcast where we celebrate the people, passions, and stories shaping life across our college community. I'm your host, Julie White, and today's episode takes us from a discussion about end-of-life care all the way to the Ontario Court of Appeal and even to SWIFT calculations. We're starting with our member spotlight, where I sit down with trades professor Barry Botham for a fun, rapid-fire round before moving into a truly meaningful conversation about Barry's journey into end-of-life care and how supporting students through grief changed the course of his work, what it means to be an end-of-life doula, and why he's now designing a 22-string Reverie harp for music therapy. And later in the show, we shift gears again to our fine print forum segment with Christina Chrysler, where we unpack the Ontario Court of Appeal's recent decision on our right to strike, Bill 178, and why this is important for the labor movement across Canada. It's an episode with humor, humanity, and some big conversations about care, community, and our rights as workers. But first, let's have some fun. Here's Barry in the rapid-fire hot seat.
Let's go.
All right, first question. You must always dress like you're at a 70s disco party, or you must always wear medieval garb?
Oh, I'm thinking a 70s disco party.
Who do you text the most?
That would be my wife.
Smart answer. One item on your bucket list.
One item on my bucket list, to parachute one day.
Very cool. If you could swap jobs with someone at SLC for a week, who would it be and why?
Wow, that's a great one. I love my job, so I don't really want to swap with anybody, if that's a good answer.
That's a great answer. What emoji do you overuse to the point of embarrassment?
On my phone, when I respond, if I push on the thumbs up and I hold it for a long time, it'll go to be a great big thumbs up, and everybody just says, that's a little much, Barry.
What's a place you've always wanted to visit?
I'd love to go out to see the big fir trees in BC.
Beautiful. All right. You'll win $1 million if you post a selfie every time you eat a meal for the rest of your life, or if you never check social media again.
I'd be never check social media again, I think.
All right. What were you afraid of as a child?
Actually, we'd go to a parade, and I would hide behind my parents whenever a clown would go by.
Do you still have clown issues?
I do not. I've actually been a clown since.
Have you? Okay. Would you rather have regrets about actions or inactions?
I would say inactions.
If you could teleport anywhere right now, where would it be?
I honestly can't think of an answer for that.
You're exactly where you want to be then.
Well, there you go.
You're in the right job and you're in the right place.
100%.
So let's use that segue and move into talking a bit about how you got into teaching and how you came to St. Lawrence.
Yeah, a little bit of my background story. It stems back to when I was in grade 6 and 6, 7, and 8. I had a woodworking teacher, and he did a lot of things that I was very impressed with, including teaching. He carved, he did woodworking, built cabinets, and I, oddly enough, have lived pretty much the same life that he lived, and that's where my interest for teaching came in. I had my own business, and with my business, I was working with an apprenticeship office, and our associate dean moved over from the apprenticeship office into SLC's office, and I knew him really well, and I basically asked him what I needed to do to prepare to teach, and he gave me a list of courses and programs that I should take, and I did, and that's how I became an employee at SLC.
Excellent. And are you from the Kingston area?
I'm originally from the Ottawa Valley down in Smiths Falls.
Nice. All right. So you've been teaching then at St. Lawrence for how many years?
I've been there for 23 years, actually.
23. So you've seen a lot of change over time.
I have seen a lot of change, absolutely.
And a lot of people have come through your program too, and you've probably got a number of folks who are out there in industry.
100%. There are so many people that I've been fortunate to work with and see and teach and also learn from throughout the 23 years at the college.
Okay. And I know we have talked a little bit earlier about some of the things that you have experienced kind of in your time as a teacher have sparked you into learning more about end of life care. So, do you want to just kind of share a little bit about your story and what you're doing now?
Absolutely. So this goes back. Well, it goes back before, I was going to say 13 years ago, but I'll go back beyond that, where we had family members that became ill and hospitalized and eventually lost their life. And we were fortunate enough to have palliative care, end of life care workers with us to support the family, to support family members that were sick at the time, or member that was sick at the time. Number of years later, lo and behold, it was about 13 years ago now, I had 3 students all in the same cohort in 1 year that were all experiencing a form of loss. One lost a parent, one lost a partner, and one lost a child. And all 3 of them became extremely comfortable in coming to me to talk to me, to cry with me, and just basically trusted the conversation. Sometimes they would just come into the office and want to talk. Sometimes they would just come into my office and just sit quietly, which I was 100% fine with. So needless to say, I felt that I needed to be better prepared to have these tough conversations. At the time, they were tough conversations. So at the end of that academic year, I actually enrolled in a program to become certified as a palliative care, end-of-life care provider, and feel very comfortable now having conversations around illnesses and death. So that's a little bit of the history.
Okay. And this really is kind of a natural conversation.
Well, funnily enough, when the students were coming to me, I was quite pleased with my responses, not my natural responses, because when I took the training, the majority of my answers, I was fortunate that they were exactly what I should have done, or I could have fine-tuned them a little bit and that sort of thing. But the key thing is to be present when they're confiding in you, and make sure that you're listening, you're focused. And I think the biggest thing that was brought to my attention is we shouldn't be answering their questions. We should be answering their questions with a question, because the majority of the time they have the answer. They just haven't had the opportunity to voice their answer, or to voice their concern.
And the training that you're taking or that you took at the time, is it something that a lot of people are aware of?
It surprises me how people aren't aware of it. I was talking with a faculty member that lost a friend about 2 weeks ago, and I was actually telling him that I'm certified in these areas, and I'm more than willing to have conversations with either him or with a friend or family member, or the person that was sick at the time. And he said, certified? Like, how do you become certified? I've never heard of this before. And he said, I really wish I knew about this before now, because we could have made some tough conversations a little bit easier, and we could have made things a little bit easier if we did know about it. So some people do know about it, and some people aren't aware, unfortunately.
And with the growth in awareness in terms of medical assistance in dying, is that starting to maybe shift some of that awareness, or that lays some of the groundwork?
Yeah, so medical assistance in dying is something that is becoming, I wouldn't say common. It's out there, and I'm seeing more people. I've been involved 3 times in the last probably 2.5 months with people that expressed a desire to die with medical assistance. My mom actually being one of them, and that was in the early part of December. And I can tell you that because that was her interest, and the other people that I was working with, that was their interest, basically just showed 100% support, and had to explain to some family members why they were doing this, because some family members were like, well, do they need to go down this road? Do they need to go through this? What is it like? How does it look? And that sort of thing. And I mean, it's to be honest with you, personal experience. It's a beautiful death, if you can say there's a beautiful death.
Yeah, somebody has control.
100%.
Yeah. Okay. And we've heard of doulas at birth, and I believe your wife is one.
Yeah.
So there's training for a death doula as well?
Luckily enough, my wife is a birthing doula and has been at, I think it's about 54, 55 births now. And then I chose to go the other end of the spectrum. So I'm actually, when I took my training, it was actually called palliative care, end of life care provider. And now it's changed to end of life doula. So you basically talk them through, walk them through experiences yeah, so it's basically a certification that could be done either as a birth doula or a death doula. And my wife and I sort of joke and say that we've got you coming into this world and we've got you covered going out of this world.
And are you working as a death doula, as an end of life doula as well?
My role primarily, as I mentioned 13 years ago, my experience with the 3 students that were experiencing loss, when I took the certification program, my goal was to better prepare myself to be able to answer questions, deal with people that were suffering from loss. And I also wanted to, and I still want to, work more so with people that are actually dying and families that are experiencing loss. My issue is I have so many things on my plate, and my background is also building construction, and usually when I'm not teaching, I'm building a structure or a house for myself or my family. So I haven't had the time up to now, and I'm really looking at exploring these different options now for myself.
Okay, so more of a retirement, or as you're kind of slowing down, you're building anyhow.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. And in terms of the response you've had kind of from the folks around you, obviously, a lot of people are aware that you've got this special training and that you are an incredible resource. Have you had people kind of surprised too that you're doing this?
Quite a few people, actually. There's a lot of people that I've worked with in building construction trades and in the world of architecture, and they're just like, wow, I can't see you doing that. But on the other hand, I can totally see you doing that. But it just kind of catches them off guard. It's something that I'm proud to say that I'm able to help people with those difficult conversations.
Yeah. And it started from your desire to be able to support students and family in times of need. And you've certainly been able to reach out and support many others as well by the sounds of it.
100%. It's really rewarding when either students or faculty members, support staff. My door at the college, my office door is always open to anybody that would like to discuss, talk about, and just need help dealing with grief or grieving or loss or sick or ill family members.
Excellent. And are there organizations that you would recommend that people reach out to get more information? Or
There are literally hundreds of different places that you could reach out to. Here in the Kingston area, you could reach out to Home Hospice Association, End of Life Doula Association, Providence Care, great resource as well. My certification was through the Community Care Access Center here in Kingston. So all you have to do is go online and type in death doula or support in dying or grief. If you type in any of those keywords, they will take you to a lot of great supports.
okay. Death doula, could it be somebody's occupation? Or is it typically a volunteer?
It can be what you want it to be. It's pretty much like any career. There are people that are full-time death doulas. I'm on LinkedIn, and I'm connected with a number of death doulas rather, that have been doing it full-time for a number of years. I find it extremely rewarding, and a lot of people are just like, wow, how can you find that rewarding? It would be so tiring and draining. I mean, when you're helping somebody deal with the most difficult time of their life, and you can actually put a smile on their face, it is so rewarding. I mean, you could be with them for 48 hours without a break and still walk away feeling like a hero.
The reactions that you get from family members, I'm sure, is they're looking at you and the blessing that you're providing.
Absolutely. The majority of the time, I mean, when you're dealing with somebody that is dying in front of you, a lot of people are speechless. A lot of people can't say anything or are afraid of saying the wrong thing or will say the wrong thing in some occasions. So having a neutral body there, a neutral person that can actually have conversations with everybody and be emotional support is absolutely feels totally rewarding.
And the training itself didn't take terribly long?
The first couple of certificates that I attained, I basically was able to do it over a summer. There were full-time courses that I took during my summer off, and I was able to become certified before I returned back to work in September.
Excellent. And do you have any words of wisdom or pieces of advice for faculty members?
But when you're faced with tough times, there are people, and again, some of the references that I referred to earlier, the organizations that people could reach out to if they wanted to become certified, those resources are also available for people that are dealing with loss or dealing with illness. Reach out. There are people like myself that will listen, that will be there to help and be there to talk to you about different supports and different things as time gets closer to the time of death for a family member.
Now, I understand you're tying together your building construction trades with the end-of-life care through music therapy. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
So I'm actually making instruments, designing instruments to make for music therapy.
And these would be obviously wooden-based instruments?
They are. The main instrument that I'm looking at, I've been researching it, and I mean, it could be used for birth doulas. Lots of success with newborn children that are going through some difficult entries into the world, right through to death doulas where you can play the instrument. It's called a Reverie harp, and it's a 22-string fretless instrument, meaning that unlike a guitar, you don't have to keep making the notes. It doesn't matter which one of the 22 strings, which order you play them in. You're always going to have something that sounds like music, and it's designed to sit on somebody's lap at the early stages, and then when they're no longer able to sit up, they lay down, they can hold it against their body, and they just feel so much therapy, and it just puts them at ease. It's an instrument that I've been researching and just about ready to make it now, actually. So my first one. There's hundreds of the instruments being used in end-of-life care, and I love the reviews. I love the articles that I'm reading about the instruments. And making instruments, that's something that I do as a hobby anyway, so I'm just really excited about making this new 22-string instrument.
And what kind of wood do you make it out of?
I'm actually ordering some special species in, so I'm actually hoping to use a wood called cocobolo. It's a very dark wood, a dark, rich-looking wood, and resonates really well. It has really nice sound qualities.
Excellent. All right, and how did you learn about this?
Again, it's just when you hear people talking in the circle or online. The first time actually that I saw the information for this Reverie harp was on YouTube, and because I was looking at other instruments and I just saw death therapy instruments, and I thought, whoa, this is a whole category that I'd like to check out, and I just dove in a little deeper, and I can actually purchase a kit, but I'm one that likes to build things from scratch, so I'm actually picking and choosing the species of wood and all the hardware and everything for the instruments.
All right, and it sounds like the perfect musical instrument for me because I can't carry a note. So if there were something that I could use to make music.
It's funny you say that. I've been making instruments, and when it comes to playing them, I'm really not that good. But I can pick a piece of wood and identify whether I'm going to get good tone or good sound out of the piece of wood, and then make it into an instrument. And nothing pleases me more than putting it in somebody's hands that can actually make great sound come out of it. So that's one of the wins with this instrument is it can sit in anybody's hands and sound like you're making some nice music.
That's beautiful. What type of instruments do you normally make?
So I've made anything from mountain dulcimer, which is another laptop instrument. It's a stringed instrument, acoustic, strum sticks, another smaller version of a 3-string guitar, and cajon drums, another acoustic instrument that is, they started making them so that you could play them around campfires and that sort of thing. But I mean, they now have acoustic bands that are playing with nothing, not an acoustic drum that's made out of, it's basically a wood box.
Man of many talents.
Anything I do seems to revolve around wood. So I'm thinking that up to now, with end-of-life care, I might just as well bring my wood hobbies into that as well and make some instruments that we can use.
Time for the Fine Print Forum, where we read what they hope you won't.
Joining me now on the Fine Print Forum is Local 417 Communications Lead, Christina Chrysler. Today we're going to dive into the recent Ontario Court of Appeals decision related to the Back to Work legislation enacted by the Wynne government in 2017. That's the legislation that ended the full-time partial load strike. It's been weaving its way through the courts, and today Christina is going to help us make sense of what that ruling means.
I can try. So I'm going to preface this by saying I am no expert. I'm an art teacher, but I am fascinated by this and I'm geeking out a bit about it. So this Bill 178, as people may, if you were around the colleges in 2017, you'll recall that we were taking part in a record-breaking 5-week strike and were ordered back to work. So we had been proposed a final offer by the CEC, and we rejected it at a rate of 85%. So it was really strong. Normally, an employer is really hoping that while you are out on strike and you're getting cold and miserable, and certainly we were getting cold, but I would say we were far from miserable. And in fact, the solidarity was growing stronger with each passing week. And so when this vote opportunity came, it was a resounding no. We had power and we felt that. And it was uncomfortable and we weren't looking forward to being out there any longer. However, we recognized the importance of what we were doing at the time. And so as soon as that vote was cast, though, and came back with those results, the government basically said at the time, you have until 5 p.m. to resolve it. It's kind of like putting two kids in a corner and saying, sort it out, or one of those T-shirts where they have to fit inside together.
The get along shirt.
The get along shirt, right. And as it turns out, we don't get along, and a resolution was not met by 5 p.m. And so the government started the wheels turning for this Bill 178, which was to order us back to work. And OPSU's response was immediately to file a charter violation case against the government. Now, initially, it was ruled against us that this was not a violation. We appealed that decision. It's taken since then to get this response. And it's an interesting result. So it was determined that this was, in fact, a charter violation. However, the law that was passed was also considered to be legally sound. And so that's where it's really interesting to me, because you have these two opposing forces. You're saying you violated our rights, but they also had the right to do that. And that's where the real kind of conversation lies, and also the impact of that for bargaining for everyone moving forward. It was the first time the Court of Appeal has heard this argument or this charter challenge. So that was historically significant for labor law in the country. But it was also with, I believe, postal workers as well, because they had been ordered back. I mean, they've been at it for years, as we know. So it was kind of a dual purpose legal dispute there at the time. So
for a little bit of clarity for our listeners, when you're talking about our charter rights, when you're talking about the freedom of association, what exactly does that mean for people who are involved in the labor movement?
Well, it's our right to be part of a union and to participate without retribution from our employer. And our employer is ultimately the government of Ontario. So the big question here was being ordered off strike and back to work. How did that impede our right for fair bargaining? So our position was, here we are in the middle of bargaining, as best as it was when we were on strike, and to cut that shorter to impede that process means that we didn't get to leverage our power. So we had this strong vote. We had this immense solidarity across the province. And really, I look back at it again, as uncomfortable as it was, we did hold the power there. We weren't faltering, and like the CEC was really hoping we would. And the court's position, however, was that initially, at least, that since we were at a loggerheads, we were on, we weren't coming up with a resolution. Nobody was bending on either side. Therefore, collective bargaining wasn't taking place and our rights were not violated by sending us back, because essentially nothing was happening anyways. So that was kind of the initial argument as I understand it.
Hmm.
At the time, it was a little bit of a punch in the stomach, because we were building momentum and power and strength as a union. And again, it was record breaking in terms of the length that we had endured. And I don't think anyone expected us to last that long out. So, we were really having an impact that way. So that's where the hit was to us, is that it impeded our ability to outlast our employer, really, on the picket
And that
line.
a strike really is the only leverage point that a union has when it comes to the negotiating table. So that is an important lever that we held that was taken away through
And
this.
I think one of the arguments too was something referred to as the narcotic effect, that when two groups are in collective bargaining and are continually being sent to arbitration, that they can get addicted, for lack of a better word, to that process. So there's no actual collective bargaining taking place, because the assumption is we are going to get pushed to arbitration and we'll let arbitration sort it out. And that is a real threat to collective bargaining, because it should be a negotiation and a development of a shared agreement between two parties, right? And when you interfere with that, or you're continually interfering with that by forcing arbitration, then yeah, we do run that risk, that narcotic effect. And I think we have seen that, really.
Our last
It
couple of
seemed
contracts have been,
all been
yeah.
arbitration. Yeah. So I can see why that was a concern put forward. At the time, it was felt that was not a risk that we were facing, but certainly in hindsight, we can see that it was right to call that out as a potential side effect of this process.
Interesting. And it's also interesting, given that we've got OPSU representation for the support staff side, that they've had kind of a similar experience with the CEC at the bargaining table too. So the longer term ramifications of this are going to be really interesting.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
the Court of Appeal looked at Section 1 of the Charter, and that was how they based their decision then, was saying that there was damage that was being done to others.
Yes. So there's something referred to as the Oakes test. So when a charter right is violated and the government is passing a law, they can't just violate your rights. I mean, that's one thing I'll say. I'm very grateful that we are under the system that we are, because there are a lot of checks and balances. It's certainly flawed, but there are a lot of things to prevent overreach. So the Oakes test is one of those things. So it's basically all the hoops that the government has to jump through to prove that they were right in minimizing or impacting our charter rights. First, I have to think about, this law that they're putting forward. Is the goal, or their goal, is it important enough to violate someone's charter rights, or a group of people's charters, right? And then they have to think, is there a connection, or prove that there is a connection between the law as it's written that they're presenting and that goal? So you can't state that your goal is one thing and then try to slip a law through that addresses something else. They have to be connected. And then they have to prove that it's minimal impairment to that charter right. So if you're going to violate someone's charter rights, you have to do so as minimally as possible. And then finally, and probably most importantly in this, or the most difficult one perhaps to prove, is the proportionate effect. So is it for the greater good? Are the people being harmed by this, or if they didn't pass this law, in our case, the people being harmed were the students, is the harm to those students more significant than the harm that it would be created by us having our charter rights violated? And in this case, there's a pretty good argument there that students were potentially not graduating on time. And if you think about international students, there's pretty significant ramifications for that. Nursing, those types of license type career paths that have very tight timelines and that kind of thing. The money, childcare, working placements, all these types of things that were kind of thrown in the air by this. So they were able to show and pass this Oakes test, and that is why, even though the court did find that our rights were violated, that the government was right in doing that, given the circumstances. So the result of this is really interesting, because it's not really a loss for us as union people. It is now in the courts that ordering union workers back to work when on strike is a violation of our charter rights. So that has now been determined it's on the record, right? From the CEC or the government side, however, they also now have a roadmap how to prove that it's right. So when I read this, I think, well, that's wonder. How will this impact our bargaining going forward? Because is it a threat to go on strike when they know, well, if we wait 5 weeks, we can order them back and the government's going to support us because it will be exact. We'll just use the same arguments we did before. So I'm curious how this will change our bargaining process and what we leverage and how we go about it. I'm curious to see if we'll ever really go on strike in the same way again. I do think that this is one of the arguments that could be made for why OPSU in particular is trying to align a lot of our collective agreements to end around the same time or be in bargaining at the same time. So if you could imagine if we were bargaining at the same time the support was when they just went out on strike and then we went out on strike, that's a lot more powerful. Even if you can only get to do it for a short amount of time, that's a lot of power. So it is curious to me how we will use this moving forward and if we'll be doing work to rule and those kinds of things that might be more impactful in this kind of new world.
Well, thank you so much, Christina.
I can definitely see, even looking back and in the moment could see the frustration and respect how difficult it was for students when we were in the thick of it, even though we were quite firm in our own solidarity and really kind of settling into the new normal of being on strike. I do understand how difficult and frustrating and challenging it was for people who were at the beginning of their new life trying to make changes and maybe had families and that kind of thing as well. But when I see where we are now in the college system, so much of what we were fighting for then, we're seeing the impact now of not having the ability to argue some of those things, and in 2017, one of the major points of contention was around partial load and contract faculty. And we were warning then that our numbers were getting too high. This was not sustainable. This was not good. And it was around that time we were talking about the private colleges and agreements and, all these things that, I hate to say I told you so. But, we are now living in the consequence of some of those decisions that were happening in that time frame. And yeah, it was an important time for post-secondary education, just as we're in an important time once again right now as we go into bargaining in 2027. I think it's going to be a really significant time, and it'll be important that everyone's engaged and keeping an eye on what's going on with other unions to have some level of preparedness for what's going to happen to us.
All right. Or what we're going to force to happen. All right. Well, thank you so much, Christina. We'll be coming back and chatting a lot more as we begin preparations for bargaining.
And now, another fun episode of Is It a Gripe or a Grievance?
Hi, Jillian. I'm a partial load employee, and I do everything I am supposed to. I register my interest in the partial load registry every semester. Last month, I got a conditional written offer for a course assignment, but this week, 1 week before the start of the term, the offer for one of the courses was revoked, supposedly due to insufficient student enrollment. This means my status changes to part-time. I can't lose my health benefits. What can you do?
That's a really hard one. So again, see a steward, because they're going to be able to look at the registry and make sure, or look at the timetable and make sure that the course section has really been abolished. Second thing is, if you've signed a contract, they owe you 30 days. Within that period, if they're canceling the whole contract, we could make an argument that if your salary is reduced because of that cut, they should owe you that course time, that amount of money within that course. So it's 30 days. It's not terrific. Could be, 3 hours a week for 30 days, but it would be 12 hours of work, better than a kick in the head. So you have to check a couple of things. We have to make sure that the course actually was canceled or went to a full-timer, because the collective agreement says that there is a preference for full-time workers over anybody else. If the course wasn't canceled or if the course didn't go to a full-timer but went to another partial load, then that is a grievance. And we can make that grievance and hopefully get you the full semester, either get the course back or get you paid for the semester. The partial load registry states that you have to go to the people with the most service first. And so if they've removed one course because Janie whined enough and they want to give her a course and she's lower on the service list, sucks to be Janie, but those numbers, that course should go back to you. So it really depends on what happened to that course. If it's gone, if it's full-time, or if it went to another partial load.
Know your rights.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Know Your Rights. I'm your host, Curtis Runyons. Today, we start with the absolute foundation of your job, the workload cap set out in Article 11 of our collective agreement. There are a couple key numbers here, 44, 18, and 7, that you should remember. Your total workload assigned and attributed by the college cannot exceed 44 hours in any week without your written approval for overtime. If you're a post-secondary professor, your assigned teaching contract hours cannot exceed 18 hours in any week. Now, there's a crucial change related to your non-cheat teaching time. Your workload attribution includes what is called complementary functions, things like routine student assistance and administrative tasks. We have been guaranteed a minimum of 6 hours for these functions. However, we want a major improvement in our last contract. Effective January 1st, 2026, the minimum allowance for complementary functions within your 44-hour workweek increased to 7 hours. This means 5 hours are guaranteed for routine out-of-class assistance with individual students, which is up from 4 hours, and 2 hours from normal administrative tasks. This change directly addresses the increasing time that you spend supporting students outside of the classroom. Know your limits. 44 total hours, 18 teaching contact hours, and 7 hours minimum for complementary duties.
You've been listening to CAAT Tales, stories that matter to faculty and beyond. Don't miss an episode. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, visit slcfaculty.ca, and stay connected with us on social media.
The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the speakers and guests and do not necessarily reflect the official policies, positions, or statements of OPSU CEFPO St. Lawrence College or any affiliated organizations. This podcast is provided for informational and educational purposes only. While every effort is made to ensure accuracy, SLC Faculty Local 417 makes no representations or warranties of any kind, express or implied, about the completeness, reliability, or suitability of the information shared. Any reliance placed on such information is strictly at the listener's own risk. Music and sound effects used in this podcast are licensed or royalty-free. We respect copyright law and encourage our listeners do the same.